Hey everybody, my name is Nick Solero. I am General Partner and Chief Investment Officer here at Drive Capital. Today we're going to talk about Thoughtful.ai and their acquisition by New Mountain. As all of you are probably aware at this point, we exited our Thoughtful investment earlier this week, and it was a phenomenal outcome for the firm and for the fund. I want to take a minute to give proper credit where it is due. First up, big congratulations to Alex and Dan, the two founders of Thoughtful.ai. These are phenomenal founders in our portfolio, two guys that I personally have had the great pleasure to work with going back to our very first seed investment in Thoughtful in July of 2021. And from then until now, the amount that they have grown as executives and as people, I think is something to admire. I wish them the best of luck in their new chapter, together with New Mountain and the Smarter Technologies roll-up that they are now a central piece of. Case studies will be written about these guys and what they were able to achieve with Thoughtful in the middle of 2025. Things like agent-based AI and fully human-capable artificial intelligence. Like, this is in every headline that you're reading. These guys saw it way before everybody else. They were talking about this years ago, and so with the exit for Drive, this is, I think, the first of what will be a succession of successful AI-based investments. But Alex Zekoff and Dan Parsons really are, I think, pioneers in this market. So let's talk about the investment basics. We'll put the conclusions up front. It was announced that Thoughtful.ai was acquired. This is a business that Drive first invested in going back to the seed round in July of 2021. That was a $5 million investment, and we have since then have led and invested the entirety of their seed, their A, and their B. So at the time of the exit, Drive was the largest shareholder in that business and the only institutional investor in that company. I highlight that because that is indicative of our investment strategy at Drive Capital. We want to have concentrated positions in high conviction businesses in markets that we care deeply about. We don't sprinkle around investments or tap things lightly or try to do kind of more party rounds where we're partnering with other firms. We either are in or we are out, and if we are in, we want to be in size. So in practice, that means we almost always lead rounds, and we want to take the lion's share of those rounds so that we can build meaningful positions in companies of high potential. At the time of the exit, no specific numbers have been disclosed. The LPs in the audience, you'll get this in your account statements. But to put it in context, this outcome returned just shy of the entire fund for Drive 2019. So phenomenal outcome for the fund. And if you put that together with the Forge Biologics outcome that happened a couple of years ago, led by my partner Molly Bonoctopor, the Drive 2019 vintage is now fully into carry. So in industry parlance, we would say we're now over 1x DPI for the fund. This is a milestone in any venture fund when it goes from the depths of the J curve for our investors to now cash flow positive for our limited partners. So that's always a moment to celebrate. But I think for a 2019 vintage, I think that's something that we are particularly proud of, because I think history will show that venture funds of that 1920 kind of COVID era vintage, I think the performance is going to be under pressure because there were a lot of crazy investments made during that time. How did we get here? We invested in Thoughtful for the first time in 2021, but the path to making that Thoughtful investment actually happened several years earlier. You might remember the Inside the Market Map that I did about our robotics market map. This is a fundamental shift in the way that we think about automation, and I believe is going to catalyze a whole new generation of companies that are built around flexible automation at scale, and really will afford this technology to whole categories of products and parts and things that up until this point could never be automated. The journey to the Thoughtful investment and a number of investments inside our portfolio really started with the robotics market map. We had a very simple thesis that software applications were going to go from motion-driven to mission-driven. We can give a robotic cell or an automation cell a desired end state, and then the software can figure out how to get there. This manifested in our first robotics investments in companies like Path Robotics and Vector Robotics, which continue to do very well today, but ultimately led to an expansion of that overall thesis of automation more generally. That there was the concept of this pie chart of work that's done around the world. And if that pie chart a few years ago was 100% human, our thesis was that that number was only going to go down, and that the global human workforce would be increasingly augmented by legions of software workers that were going to make us more efficient at our jobs. You're probably thinking to yourself, like, that sounds kind of obvious. Haven't we been talking about this with the latest LLMs and OpenAI and this whole new category of companies called agentic AI? And the answer is yeah, totally. But we were kind of talking about that and thinking about that for years. And I think a lot of the proof that you're seeing in today's pudding was baked into the cake, if you kind of follow the metaphor, several years ago, and it's now starting to happen. And Thoughtful fits very well within that theme. So when Alex and Dan first pitched us, they had a remarkably similar story. They imagined building a platform where we could build, manage, and evaluate software robots, as they called them bots at the time, or in this case, you can think of them as AI agents, that would be increasingly fully human capable, able to do full stack workflows to get work done in a desk-based organization. Now, you'll notice I didn't mention anything about healthcare or revenue cycle or any of the things that you see in the current version of Thoughtful, or now the new company, Smarter Technologies. And it's because we did not start with healthcare focus. Alex and Dan basically did a case study in having a thesis for what a software could do, but Alex and Dan, and I helped support them, kind of went on this process to find categories of customers that had a few things in common. They were all working on a small handful of software systems of record. So if we were going to build a single piece of automation, we could build it once and then use it for multiple customers, as opposed to trying to automate on top of a hyper-fragmented landscape where every customer was going to look like unique snowflakes. The idea was that eventually the push, right? So if you're pushing a product and you're trying to convince your customers and you're trying to get them to pay attention, that once you get it right, that push would turn into a pull. One of those experiments was to sell to mid-market healthcare services. The idea is these were very large businesses. Even though you wouldn't consider like an enterprise healthcare customer might be a big hospital system, a mid-market customer were still hundreds of millions or billions of overall revenue. They operate on a small handful of systems of record that we call EHRs. And there was this entire category of desk-based labor that amounted to people acting as the API between these various systems of record that don't talk to each other. So the person was basically taking data from system A and putting it into system B, or they were taking data out of system A, calling somebody else on the phone to have them input it into their system, all that's just trying to help doctors get paid. This is a category that I personally didn't know much about. Alex and Dan didn't certainly know much about, but it was called revenue cycle management. And it turns out that it's a $1 trillion problem in the United States. We ran that sprint, and by golly, it's almost hard to believe. You read the books and they tell you that this is supposed to happen, but god dang, if that push didn't turn into a pull, I don't know what else would it mean. It was an absolutely like smack you on the back of the head example of what finding product market fit actually looks like, and it was undeniable. Alex and Dan and me said, oh my God, I think this is working. And we had enough conviction in that, the two guys decided this is going to be our entire focus for the business. We are no longer a horizontal. We are going to be a full vertical, focused on building fully human capable, what we now call agentic AI, to solve the RCM problem in America. And the rest, as they say, is history. The numbers went straight up and to the right. The customers are thrilled. The business really started to pull everything along. Ultimately, once that push became a pull, it became an exercise in execution. How do we keep the team focused? How do we build the product to live up to the promises that we made to our customers? And importantly, how do we not kind of buckle under the weight of our own success? And from then until now, I think the team has executed flawlessly and the business metrics show it. And so while today or this week marks the end of Drive's part of the overall Thoughtful story, Thoughtful is not done, and they have a tremendous platform in partnership with New Mountain to go in and continue to execute on the big picture vision for the company. We're no longer shareholders, but we are forever fans of Alex and Dan. We will be on the sidelines rooting for the business, because I think it actually has an opportunity to help fix a lot of the problems with the American healthcare system. And we wish all of the team, Alex, Dan, everybody at Thoughtful, the best.